Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I have a little bit of flu. Good morning. I don't know if I have coronavirus though. It's funny how people nowadays are fearing you if you have just a common flu, because they think you have coronavirus and they do not want to come close to you. Well, you won't get coronavirus. You'll be fine. Basically, what we'll be studying this morning is Daniel chapter 11, and I want to go through it. This is not a in-depth study, but it will be a brief run through, and then we will see some of the implications that it has. And there's two big powers that are going to be fighting each other, which is the king of the north and king of the south. And some people still think it is Turkey. There's some things that Turkey is doing at the moment, but I'm going to try to show that, of course, some of our pioneers, most of them, they believe in the idea that Turkey was the king of the north. But I'm going to try to give some biblical evidence as well as spirit of prophecy to show that that is not true. But I hope that it will be a good presentation, and I'll show some current events that shows that is actually happening at the moment. Now, if you have any further question, please leave it in the comments below, and we'll get to answer some of the questions. If you want in-depth study on some of the things which I will be mentioning, and if you want, I'll tell you to comment below so that we make further videos on it. But this is a brief introduction, brief overview of the last verses of Daniel chapter 11. But before we go into that, let's close up with a word of prayer. Open up with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father in heaven, we are trying to study your word this morning, this day. I pray that your presence be with me, help me, inspire me, talk to me, and then touch my lips, touch the hearts of those who will be listening. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Now, basically what we will be doing in this presentation is we will study from Daniel chapter 11, but not the entire. You want to see the entire commentary on it, you can go through other of our pioneers like Uriah Smith, the book on Daniel and Revelation. He has an excellent commentary, although the closing part of Daniel chapter 11, his commentary, I do not agree with him on some of the things that he says, and I will explain why I do not agree with him. Now, we'll begin with verse 30, and I will tell you later why I'm starting off with verse 30, but from verse 30 to the end. Now it says, "For the ships of Shittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return, and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant." Now, it is beginning, if you see the previous chapter, it talks about pagan Rome, and then it is shifting on to papal Rome. And how does it begin? You see, Shittim, it's actually, if you remember from history, you can see Gennesaret was one of the 10 divided nations of Rome. Gennesaret with his group, the Vandals, they were causing a lot of, they were attacking the Romans and destroying the properties, and they usually use ships. So those are the peoples, God's punishment on the Rome through these people, the Vandals. Now we still use the name vandalism. The word vandalism comes from the Vandals. They were famous in causing vandalisms. And then you see towards the end it says, "He shall have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant." What is the holy covenant? This is not the old covenant. Remember, the old covenant was with Israel, but the covenant there is a beginning point where the covenant shifts from literal Israel to spiritual Israel. When does it begin? When you can see in verse 22 of Daniel chapter 11, it says, "And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken. Yea, also the prince of the covenant." The prince of the covenant, he came to confirm the covenant again. Daniel chapter 9, if you remember, confirmed the covenant again. But this time he confirmed it with the Christians. Now, let me give you a biblical principle. Let's go to, when sometimes people say it is only a literal prophecy, not a spiritual prophecy. Let me show you. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 46. There is a very spiritual, biblical explanation, reason why we see from literal to spiritual, or physical to spiritual. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 49, it says, 1 Corinthians, let me see, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 46 rather, it says, howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterwards that which is spiritual. So whatever it was in the past which was physical or literal or physical, it's now changed to the natural is now changed to spiritual. So the natural or the physical Israel, the literal Israel, is now being changed to spiritual. So beginning with the covenant, the prince of the covenant, he came to confirm the covenant with the spiritual Israel as well. And then now you see the shift. Every time after 22 verse 22, it's not referring, when it says the covenant, it's not the old covenant with the Israelites. It's the new covenant, the people of the covenant. It is the new Christian movement. It's not the old Israelites, the spiritual Israel. So that is where, let's continue. He shall have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Which is the covenant? The covenant is the covenant that Jesus established with the disciples, and the apostles were preaching, the disciples were preaching to the people the good news of the covenant that was confirmed. But then those who fell away from the covenant, now they are making the pagan, the Roman power is trying to have intelligence with him so that they can have a relationship, mingling of paganism and Christianity. Paganism and Christianity. Now let's go on. And the harm shall stand on his path, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifices added there. It's applied. That's why it's in italics. And they shall place the abomination that make a desolation. Now the harms that is placed on his path is in 508, when King Clovis gave the French army at the disposal of the papacy. And then the papacy removed the three horns, if you remember from Daniel. He removed the Herulite, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, and the last of them was removed in 538. And then he rose to supremacy. The papacy rose to supremacy. So the word daily here, there's sometimes a confusion of it. If you want me to make another video clarifying it, you can leave a comment below. But you can see in early writings 74 and 75, it says, "Our pioneer the correct understanding of the daily." We have to go back to what they understood of the daily. This understanding, they were all in one accord, and they were correct about it. And verse 32, it says, "And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits." Now, these are the way in which the papacy was winning and gaining favor and conquering the world, to flatteries, and then he caused exploits, and that is how he prospered. Verse 33, "And they that understand amongst the people shall instruct many." One of the work that we Christians are to do is not study for ourselves. After we study, we should shine the light. And even if we do not preach about it, our lifestyle should condemn sin. And that is what will happen in the last day. It's not more of preaching, it will be more of practical Christian living. And so, yet they shall fall by the sword. Yet they will fall by the sword. That's what it's saying. The persecution will go on. Captivity will go on. By the sword, by flames, by captivity, and by spoils for many days. What is spoils? Spoils is when, the papacy told them, if you go and destroy these people, their property will become your property. You can have possessions over them. So that is basically what spoils means. And that is how they treated the Christians during the Dark Ages. Now, let's further go. 34. It says, "Now when they shall fall, they shall be helped with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries." This is a little help. Where is a specific place we see that the Christianity gains prominence with a little help? Before 1798. 1798 is when the papacy will come to a complete end. But before that, it is with the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther. After that, there was a small cutting down of persecution, but not the complete end of the papal supremacy. There will be a help, and with a little help. Now verse 35. And some of them of understanding shall fall, and try them, and to purge and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. So what are we seeing here? These it says that those problems are coming to purify and purge his people, but the rulership of the papacy, when does it continue? Even to the time of the end, because it is for a time appointed, or appointed time. Now let's go to verse 36. This is the part that our pioneers diverge. They say that this is a new power, but if you see from the context, it is the same power. It says, and the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, and that is determined shall be done. Friends, what is this power? This is the same power that exalts itself above God. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4, we see in the previous chapter of Daniel as well, it talks about the power that rages war against the saints and then against the God of heavens. This is the same power here. Verse 37. And let me see. So you see, this is the continuation of the same power. And then we see in verse 37, it's the same thing. Going to verse 37, it's the same power. Neither shall he regard the gods of his father. You know, the papacy's understanding of the God, the deity, is different from what we have. If our understanding is the same as that of the Catholics, we have a misunderstanding of who God is. Now, no desire of woman. Who doesn't have desire for woman? It is taught to the priests and the priests that they shouldn't have desires, relationship with women. No regard any God, no gods. They are the representative of God. Then you can see a lot of quotation. Just search in the internet Catholic quotes that shows that they prove themselves to be God on earth, or a representative of God on earth. Now, regards of any God, for he shall magnify himself above all, but in his estate shall he honor the God of force. The only power that persecuted more people in the history of this world, a religious power, is the papacy. Or even you can compare it with other powers as well. The papacy was the one that ruled the longest and had a lot of blood in his hands. And a God whom his father knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and precious stone and pleasant things. Who is the one that makes up statues and tell people to bow down to it with precious metals? It's the papacy. It's the same power. Now, where are we? Verse 39. Thus shall he do in the most stronghold with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. Who is this? This is the papacy. Who divided? Some people say it was the French under Napoleon. In fact, Napoleon did some dividing of the land for gain. But who was the one that divided the land for gain before 1798? Because we are still before the time of the end, before 1798. It was the papacy. The papacy was dividing the land for his own gain. You see? So now we are going to verse 40 now. We are coming to the term that we will be studying. It is the king of the north and king of the south. Let's see. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. The king of the south, who is it? King of the south. When we began, it was the here, literally in the beginning, it was Egypt. But Egypt, we have to understand the way in which they understood God. Who was God? Let's go to Exodus chapter 5 verse 2. Exodus chapter 5 verse 2. It talks about when Pharaoh, or rather when Moses And Aaron went to before Pharaoh, and they said, let the children of Israel go. Let the firstborn Israel of God leave Egypt. And what did Pharaoh said unto them? Exodus chapter 5 verse 2 says, and Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go. So the power, this power here, the king of the south, literally it referred to the Egyptian, but now Egyptian in spiritual sense, it refers to the French. Now the French here, it says, and the king of the south pushed at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a wild wind, and the chariot, and with chariots, and with horsemen, and with many ships, and shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. So the king of the north, king of the south, first attacks him. The word here, push at him, you can see in the Old Testament it talks about when a cow, there are some examples I'm giving, when a cow pushes a man and it dies. Basically the word push, it's giving a deadly wound to cause someone to die. Now it's interesting, in the Spanish version the word push here, it's wounded. So the king of the south gave a deadly wound to the papacy. Who is that? When did that happen? 1798, at the time of the end. That is where we get the understanding of the time of the end. At 1798, the French General Battier of France entered into Vatican. He conquered, captured Pope Pius VI and brought him into captivity, put the papal reign to a complete end. So he received a deadly wound at that time. And the king of the north shall come against him like a wild wind, but he will return like a wild wind. I will show some events that how he returned again, with chariots and with horsemen and with many sheep, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. So how does it come? I want to explain into details. The chariots and horsemen refers to military powers, and then ships, it usually refers to economy. The economy power was given to him as well, and he shall enter into the countries and overflow and pass over. Now let's go to 41. And he shall enter into the glorious land, and many shall be overthrown, but this shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Now, I won't explain more in this video, but the glorious land here is not the church. It's not the church. It's referring to the United States of America. I can make another video about it. I need ample time to explain. In Acts, it tells us that when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they were a church, but they were never a glorious land in the wilderness. It's talking about when they were at the bottom at the base of Mount Sinai. They were a church, but they were not the glorious land as yet. The glorious land was in Canaan. They were supposed to go and occupy that land. So there is a clear distinction between a church and a glorious land. And it says a land, so it has to be a land. Now, I will explain that probably in another video. Shall he overthrow, but these shall escape. Who shall escape out of his hand? Even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. Who is Moab and Ammon? Moab and Ammon are the two sons of the daughters of Lot. How were they conceived? In a sexual relationship that involved drunkenness. That is Babylon, the children of Babylon, children of prostitution, children of adultery, fornication. Who is Edom? Edom is the son of Esau, the generation of Esau. The parents Jacob and Rebekah, rather Isaac and Rebekah, were not happy when Esau was having relationship with the people of Canaan. It burdened them. Those relationships was unpleasant relationships that Esau had with the people, the Canaanites. You see, but the common denominator that they had was that those people have ties with the people of God, the chosen generation, the selected generation, a selected race. So those people will escape. Remember Revelation chapter 18, come out of Babylon. They will hear the call and come out of Babylon. They will escape from Babylon. In verse 43, but ye shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver and over all the precious things of Egypt. So Egypt, we saw the same in another place. It talk about the king of the south. Egypt is the same thing. The pagan nations around the world, he shall conquer them as well, and have power over them as well. And the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his steps. Now, Libyans and Ethiopians, every time you see that word appearing, it's referring to hammer, military power. Let's quickly go to Jeremiah chapter 46 verse 9. 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 And look at how it describes these two nations. It says, come up, ye horsemen, and raid ye chariot, and let the mighty men go forth, and Ethiopians and Libyans that handle the shield, and the Libyans that handle and bend the bow. So what do you see here? Military power. Now let's see Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 5. Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 5, it also using the same terminology. Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 5. I will read here. It says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmet. So you see, when he talks about these two nations, it is tied to military power. So military power shall be at his steps. Do you see that? Now, where we? Ethiopians shall be at his steps. Verse 44. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury and destroy and utterly make away many. So when that happens, there will be tidings out of the east and out of the north. Now let me ask you, what comes out of the north? In Revelation chapter 18, and after these things I saw another mighty angel coming from where? Coming from heaven, coming down. And the earth was illuminated with his glory. But that angel is this, it comes in Revelation chapter 7, we see the sealing message. It comes from where? From the east. So a man coming from the north, but then the message comes from the east. Now let's go to Isaiah chapter 41 verse 25 to confirm that. Isaiah chapter 41. Isaiah chapter 41. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 25 talks about someone coming from the north or from up there, but it comes from the east. It says, I have raised up one from the north. There's someone from the north, and he shall come from the rising of the sun. Where does the sun rise? From the east. Shall he call upon my name, and he shall come upon princesses and upon mortars, and as the potter treadeth clay. Who is this power, I tell you? It is those who will be preaching the third angel's message, the sealing message, the message of Sabbath, the sealing message that comes from the east with the power of the one above, the true king of the north, which is seated in the throne above, at the side of the north. Now, let's go to 45. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the seas in the glorious land. The better translation should be seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So basically here you see is that this power is persecuting, going against those people who have the good tidings from the north and from the east. And then what he's trying to do is to place a distinction between the people, the seas, and the glorious holy mountain. Where's the glorious holy mountain? Mount Zion. And where are the seas? You remember in Revelation it says, all the world wander after the beast. We are of this world, we are in this world, but not of this world. Why? Our names should be written up there. Now, there will be some people whose names are up there, but it will be removed. Isaiah chapter 4. Isaiah chapter 4, verse 2 and 3, it says, and in that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. The escaped of Israel. This is from where we get the name remnant is the same. The leftover, the remaining, not those who are apostated. Verse 3, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, in the holy mountain, those who are not those whose names will be blotted out, but those whose names still remain there in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy. He that is holy, let him be holy still. Even everyone that is written amongst the living in Jerusalem. So you see that there is a distinction between those who are of the world and those who are of Zion, of heaven. The beast will come up with a mark that will distinguish the people. But once he does that, what will happen? In Daniel chapter 12 says, at that time, Michael shall stand up. Do you see that? Now, before I finish, I want to show why, because some people still believe in what our pioneers said. I will show why the pioneers went wrong, and then I will go through some prophetic current events, and then we'll finish. Look at Matthew chapter 24. Now, where did our pioneers went wrong? Now, you can go back and read verse 46 again. I will just quickly go through, the points that this is what Uriah Smith says in his book. Now, don't get me wrong. I read through Uriah Smith's work, and I appreciate that book. We have a lot of truths that we have to learn still from there. But what we should do is compare what they said with what the Bible says, and we should study both to get the true answer. Now, firstly, he says that the king here is not a king. Now, I will show a quote that says that the spirit of prophecy shows that the spirit of prophecy shows that it's the same power that continues. It says, and this is what the Uriah Smith says, a king magnifies himself above every god. The king here introduced cannot denote the same power that was last noticed, namely the papal power. So at first he said it's papal power, but now he's saying that it's another power. For the specification which will not hold good if applied to that power. Take a declaration in the next verse. No regard any gods. This was never been true for the papacy, which is his own ideas. God and Christ, though often placed in a false position, have never been professedly set aside and rejected from the system of religion. Now listen to this. Three particular features must appear in the power which fulfills the prophecy. It must assume the character here delineated near the beginning of the time of the end, and that is one, and two, to which we were brought down to the preceding verses. And it must be a willful power. It must be an atheistical power. Perhaps the two later specifications might be united and saying that its willfulness would be manifested in the direction of atheism. Friends fulfill this prophecy. Now, you read through the entire commentary, but he never gives a single verse to support it and why and how biblically he can justify it. Now, but if you read, it's a continuation. The same power that is spoken of in chapters beginning from verse 30, it continues all the way to verse 36 as well. Now, I will show another quote from the Spirit of Prophecy, as I said, to confirm. Sorry, some birds are flying. Now, another thing that I want to question those who say that the papacy is the king of the north is Turkey. What they professedly say is Turkey rules until the close of probation. Let me just ask you this. When does the king of the papacy comes to power? After the probation closes? No. Well, if you are saying yes, then how did he have the power to force everyone not to buy and sell except they that receive the mark? He has to come up before that time. Even Sunday law we know. How can he force that? He has to have economic power before he stop control buying and selling and forcefully implement the Sunday law. Do you see that? Now, so when the probation closes, it's when the reigning of the papacy comes to an end, and Michael stands up. What does it represent? To rule. How do we know that he is ruling? There won't be persecution during that time. Jesus is guarding his people, giving victory over his people, and those are the true and rightful heirs of this earth. The other ones, the meek shall inherit the earth. The sinners will be destroyed by fire. Now, you see that there's the second point I'm giving. The third point, I'm giving it, and then I'll go to some current events that is happening. Now, this code kind of makes everything clear for me. It says, we have no time to lose. Troublous times are before us. The world is stirred with the spirit of war, and soon the scene of trouble spoken in the prophecies will take place. The prophecy in the 11th chapter is nearly 11th of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history has taken place in fulfillment of the prophecy will be repeated in the 30th verse. Listen. In the 30th verse, a power is spoken of that shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the Holy Covenant. This is the first time the papacy have intelligence with those who have fallen away from the covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the Holy Covenant. And then, if you see it, further quotes, this is verse 30, and then see further quotes verses 31 to 36. Do you see verse 36 is included? It's the same power that continues ruling on. So how does the Spirit of Prophecy, how does Ellen White sees the chapter 36? Is it another power? No, it's the same power. Now, scenes similar to this will take place. Let all read and understand the prophecy of this book, for we are now entering upon the time of trouble spoken of. She knew what she was saying. Now, let me say another thing here. It says, much of the history that has taken place in fulfillment of this prophecy will be repeated, it says. And the second paragraph it says, scenes similar to those described in these words will take place. The fulfillment of the closing verses of Daniel chapter 11, it's a repetition of what happened in verse 30 to 36. Do you see that? What happened in verse 30 to 36 will be repeated. What specifically will repeat itself? The main character that had indignation will be returning. It is not a dual fulfillment. It is a repetition of the same way the papacy came into power. He will gain power in the same way and rule in the same way again. He will rise up and military will be given to him. Economic power will be laid at his hands. He will hold the control over gold and the silvers of this world and force everyone not to buy and sell except they that receive the mark. Do you see that? That is what we are going against. Now, I want to specifically show something again here. Here we see a supposed battle between the king of the north and king of the south. Who did we say is the king of the north? is the papacy. Who is the king of the south? Atheism is the king of the south. The spirit of Egypt, atheism. Atheism going against the king of the north, the papacy. I want to take you back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. It says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things shall come to pass, but the end is not yet." So that is Matthew chapter 24 and verse 6. What does verse 7 says? Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. Wars and rumors of wars. Verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. So basically, will there be wars at the closing, at the last day? There will be wars happening. Now, so Ellen White also affirms that there will be wars, or the spirit of strife. Now, look, the world will be stirred with the spirit of war. After she says the world will be stirred with the spirit of war, what power does she declare? What Bible text does she seems fit to explain? The prophecies in the 11th of Daniel as nearly reached its complete fulfillment. There will be a sign of the spirit of war seen in the 11th chapter of Daniel that we should be studying. Friends, you may be asking, will there be any war between the king of the north and king of the south? I don't know, but I can see a spirit of war, rumor of war going on in the news, which I'd like to share with you. Now, I want to begin, remember, with verse 40, it says, "The king of the north shall return like how? Like a whirlwind," right? Like a whirlwind. Now, if you remember, in bringing down the communism in the mid-1900s, there was a relationship between the papacy and the USA. It was called the Holy Alliance. Now, we saw that in the Times magazine, Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II, they came to a relationship so that they can bring down communism. And they were successful to some degree. But that was not the complete fulfillment. There was the fulfillment of the papacy coming back to power, having intelligence with fallen away Protestantism, apostate Protestantism, or apostate Protestants of the United States. Now, look at what's going on now. You remember in 2015, September 23, the papacy stepped on U.S. soil. The visit that he made, it's called the whirlwind visit. Does it ring a bell? Daniel chapter 11, he shall return like a whirlwind. You see, in the New York Times, it says, highlight from Pope Francis' visit to the USA. A whirlwind papal journey concludes. What's the name of the journey or the trip? The visit? A whirlwind visit. It's not the only place. Eyewitness News, ABC 7, it says, Pope Francis' whirlwind visit to disrupt transportation and businesses. Was it a coincidence? You decide. Pope's whirlwind New York tour comes to an end. This is from CBS New York. Pope Francis begin 39 hours whirlwind visit to New York. He knows what he is doing. You know, sometimes we see events happening, but those words that they are using that comes up is the same words that the Bible uses. Pope Francis makes big impression in whirlwind visit of New York City. Now, friends, he is coming back. And when he is coming back, there should be what? A spirit of war. Spirit of war. Now, let's see this quotation. This is from RT. It says, split society, global chaos, and World War III. We could be in the most turmoil era in the modern history. Why are they saying that? the quotation states, as we cross into the second half of 2020, there is little hope left that our misfortune will end with this annus horribilis goes out. We may be entering one of the most cataclysmic and fateful period in the history of humankind. There is a growing realization that humanity is in for an extreme rough ride that could last at least a decade. This is what specialists saying. Now, why are they saying that? There's a specific reason. They are specifically talking about the spirit of war between China and the United States. Now, let me tell you what promotes atheism. It is communism, Communist Manifesto. It was developed by Karl Marx and presented in 1844, the same time the Adventist Church was born. Now, in that book, it contained the spirit of a government that is atheistic, rejecting God. Now, let me tell you, which countries today are atheistic? China and Russia, but foremost of all is China. And you know what? There is a spirit of war between China and the United States. Now, there are some different issues that are going on causing all this, but one of them is the race for the battle of 5G. And USA wants to lead, but China seems to be leading with the Huawei. And now they are trying to fight against the Huawei, which is one of China's China's company that is fully supported by the government, and the government gave them like $70 billion. Now, apart from all the other companies, why would the government specifically give them that huge chunk of money? Unless they have something in that for themselves. Now, the USA is suspecting them of spying on the US and the world through the Huawei product. Now, I'll show you a video. You can watch this.
The arrest of Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou put markets on edge.
This new element of the stock tumble, an arrest, the CFO of Huawei.
The CFO and her company are under scrutiny by U.S. authorities who claim that the Chinese telecoms gear maker violated U.S. sanctions on Iran.
This arrest, I think that is not going to go unanswered.
At the time, it was seen as the latest skirmish in the trade war between the U.S. and China, but it's actually the latest entry in an ongoing high-tech struggle between the US and the Chinese smartphone giant over national security. Huawei is now the #2 smartphone player in the world, shipping more units than Apple. The company is right behind Samsung. The US has taken a hard stance against the company even before the arrest, so why go after Huawei? Huawei has been under scrutiny since at least 2011 for its allegedly close ties to the Chinese government. Some US lawmakers and intelligence officials think that Huawei's hardware could also provide a backdoor for China's massive and sophisticated state surveillance apparatus. Huawei denies these allegations. American lawmakers and regulators have been fighting Huawei's introduction to the US market for years. In 2011, Huawei backed out of a deal to buy a startup called Three Leaf Systems because of US government pressure. And a year later, the House Intelligence Committee issued a report that accused Huawei and ZTE, a Chinese rival, of stealing intellectual property from American companies and supporting espionage efforts. Huawei is now wrapped up in President Trump's trade war with China, but the security issues loom large. The Federal Communications Commission introduced new rules in April 2018 that block federally subsidized telecom carriers, like AT&T, from using suppliers deemed a risk to national security, including Huawei. The Pentagon also stopped selling mobile phones and modems made by Huawei at stores on military bases in April 2018 because of security risks. Around the same time, the directors of the CIA, FBI, NSA, and other intelligence agencies made a case against Huawei and ZTE before the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee.
We're deeply concerned about the risks of allowing any company or entity that is beholden to foreign governments that don't share our values to gain positions of power inside our telecommunications networks. That provides the capacity to maliciously modify or steal information, and it provides the capacity to conduct undetected espionage.
As a result, President Trump signed a bill in August banning government use of Huawei and ZTE devices. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton alleged that, quote, Huawei is effectively an arm of the Chinese government and that it can steal information from U.S. officials by hacking its devices.
These companies are dangerous to our national security and to your privacy. Huawei and ZTE are nothing more than extensions of the Chinese Communist Party. Huawei's CEO was an engineer for the People's Liberation Army. The company's livelihood consists largely of a steady stream of government contracts. And its greatest claim to fame is shamelessly stealing the secrets of American companies. That's why it's under investigation by the Department of Justice for that and for violating sanctions against Iran.
American companies are also feeling pressure for ties to the Chinese smartphone company. AT&T, for example, dropped a deal with Huawei to sell their phones at the start of 2018. All of this is happening before 5G potentially reshapes the telecom industry. 5G networks are super fast, and they're designed to support the next generation of the internet. 5G is supposed to power not only smartphones, but also driverless cars and web-connected factories. Huawei wants to become a major player in 5G outside of China, but it's facing pressure internationally because of cybersecurity concerns dogging the company. The US is urging its allies to block Huawei from 5G projects in their countries, and both Australia and New Zealand recently did just that. So as the legal drama involving Meng plays out and continues to rattle global markets, remember, it's part of a years-long struggle between Huawei and those who worry about its alleged close connections to Chinese spies.
Now, that is not the only reason why they are going into war, but it seems to be the same spirit that pervaded during the Cold War period, the mid-1900s. Now look, this is from the Daily News. It says, experts warn a horrible surprise coming. US-China military clash within 6 months. Rumors of wars. Will it be happening? I don't know. But the Bible predicts that something like that will be going on. A nation will literally fight against nation as well. If it happens, I won't be surprised. But God forbid. I hope it doesn't happen. Because see, the weapon that we have today, it will kill thousands, destroy millions of lives. Now, this is the Express News. It says, World War III, China chilling warning of unbearable consequence if US aids Australia. Almost every day we hear of this, the tension between the United States and the China. But at the end, we know that they will come into a relationship. And when they come into a relationship, what will happen? They will fight against the people of God, attack the people of God. These seemingly two big enemies will come into one, and they will attack the people of God. And those events that are occurring are very prophetic. And this is a call for us to study the Word of God, to understand what it has for us and what God has predicted in the Bible will happen. And those who know, those who have understanding, should understand it. And after understanding it, we have the obligation to tell the world of what is coming before the world is attacked by this deadly power. We have a message to give to a dying world. We have been appointed as watchmen and light bearer to share the message of the three angels to the world before Jesus comes. No other people on the face of this earth, no other church have that message. Adventists, we have the message from the north and from the east, and we are to prepare people to stand up before our holy God without a mediator. And let us experience this message for ourselves, and let us present this truth to the world. And while all these things are happening, let us be prepared as well. because Jesus is coming soon. May you be blessed by this presentation. Let's close up with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this message that we have heard. May it strengthen us and help us to know that those things that are happening are actually what you predicted, and may we walk closely with you to gain victory over sin and Satan, to understand those things that are happening and tell the world about it. And when you come, we would have saved ourselves as well as people to stand before you, true to you, in the last great battle. Thank you for listening to our prayer. Answer this prayer according to your own will, because I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.